What's up, bookworms? Welcome to episode 100 of the Cantina Book Club podcast, where readers can find interviews with authors of all genres. I am Megan, self-proclaimed content queen, here to bring you insights from the authors themselves. Each week features a Cantina conversation with an author. This instance, for episode 100, I'm doing something a little bit special. I've gone through all 100 episodes, all the interviews I've done so far, and have chosen my favorite clips. Some of them are really short, maybe like less than 40 seconds, but some of them are a few minutes long. But either way, this is designed to clue you guys in as to some of my most fun and enjoyable moments just from interviewing these amazing, talented people, talking about their work, having the opportunity to read their work before anybody else does and give my opinions on it, and also just get a little bit of insight and also get to know and share the insights with you all. And hopefully, if it's an author that you've known, you've kept your eye on, that there is something here for everyone and that you can get a little bit more of details of what they're like inner workings as they're creating your favorite work. So for episode 100, it's going to be a long one, but you're going to find clips of my favorite interview moments for the past year and a half. Basically, it's going to be a collection of all the authors. So these authors, likely you've heard of them, some of them that you haven't, but I hope that they are on your radar now after listening to some of these funny clips. And just a heads up that most of these clips, as all the interviews, are spoiler free, but you might enjoy them a little bit more if you do read the book. So just keep that in mind as you're perusing. Hopefully, that you're looking back at previous episodes and guests and trying to figure out who you've heard of before, what book you've read before, and you could pick the episode, the conversation to try to dig into. And just a heads up, a lot of these clips are going to include some adult language and adult themes, adult topics. Sometimes I give the authors crap for making me feel certain things, or I just want to shake up the characters and tell them to get their shit together. But just be mindful around listening ears. So, books coming out this week, we've got The Cruel Dawn by Rachel Housel Hall. That is the sequel to the last one, the fantasy duology that she released this past year. I'm really excited about this, and she's going to also be a future guest on the podcast soon. So keep an eye out. And I recommend that for fantasy lovers to check that out as well. Podcast features, if you're looking for additional bookish podcasts to listen to, whether it's author interviews or they're breaking down certain books, maybe it's a movie adaptation of a book, check out Book Podcast Connection on Instagram. And it's a collection of over 100 bookish podcasts for anybody who's looking to get a little bit extra out of their reading list. I definitely recommend that you guys check out and just support them and see. You might find that you are really enjoying some of the conversations that are going out there that maybe are a little bit harder to find. As I said, today's episode is a special one. It's a long one, but you should be able to chime in and out of these random clips. I You might not always know who you're speaking with, or two, you might. I promise you that the conversations are still worthwhile. And if you guys have any questions about this episode or anything else that I've encountered in the first 100 episodes, feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to share my thoughts and experiences with you. And of course, I'm going to keep continue doing this. And so I'd love if you guys stick around. Without further ado, enjoy 100 Cantina conversations and counting.
I don't really have any survival skills, so I'm just like glad that I was. 'Cause I see those memes as though like if I step foot in my favorite fantasy novel, I wouldn't survive
I
the
would be
week.
dead.
I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd probably just try to find Kirsten and her crew, but can you teach me some
Can you
things? Like,
teach
can
me?
you?
But also that's why food is so important in the book. There's several different scenes where they are sitting down to eat and she's just, I can't believe this food is here and exists. And I think about that a lot with the Hunger Games. There's always these scenes of these feasts and banquets, and these kids are looking at it going, what is wrong with these people? This could feed
Yeah,
everyone. And it's like how you look at food changes based on your circumstances.
yeah.
Especially
I
with
know.
grocery prices being insane right now.
I know, and I remember like reading that as I think, yeah, when it first came out, and it was just like, I think that's one of the first. I think I was like, yeah, in I don't know. I think I was like 22 or something when it first came out. If I forget, I just remember like I was in college and I finished
Yeah.
the trilogy in a week or like 10 days or something like that because I was just like sucked in.
Oh, I
And
read
I
it in a
think that was like
weekend.
one of the first. Yeah, seriously, it just sucks you in, and it was just written so well, and it was like it was almost like a game changer, and it just even as like dark as and harsh as that world was, it still was so many people, and I think that's one of the first times it clicked for me, growing up in the world, and it clicked for me. Oh yeah, like there's concentration, and it's totally unequal, and it's totally not distributed fairly.
Yeah.
And it's the perspective. It's the one of those things that stand out. It's all they purposely vomit so they can eat more. And
Yeah, I
it's like,
always think about
right.
that scene.
And then a segue to something that I wanted to talk about, like Franklin is really has hard, like really deep depression. Like he's serious case of, they call it melancholia, that in that time, and they're just trying out meds and all that and trying to figure out. And I totally like sympathize with him because he let himself into those like moments. And then when he was done, he was just like, it was just the acceptance. Like when he was over it, he was like, oh yeah, like this happens kind of thing. But it was almost like, ooh, like the grass is always greener. And then until you get to the more serious, like the flaws and for better, or for worse, a part of it. And that's when Amelia's like, shit, what did I get myself into? This is what I would be dealing with if this is a choice I made. And so I felt that's like where, if for me at least, it started tugging more at the heartstrings. And I want to like get into explore that a little bit, how you integrated that into this character, and just, like, it made him obviously such a fascinating character and multidimensional and all that, but it was like, I think it's just because Amelia had to learn how to love someone with the serious mental illness, and it wasn't just like a simple thing. It was like it gets bad. It gets bad for him.
Yeah. Depression theme was very like that was from the beginning. I think because I was so heartbroken, actually the real life guy had depression. And I think that was part of the reason we didn't work. And it was more that he didn't want to let me in to help, and not like at a 3-month relationship, not that you can just be like, all right, here I'm giving up my life.
Or yeah.
But hindsight, thinking back, it's what could I have done differently? What would I have chosen? Would I have chosen, had this gone on longer? What could have happened? And it was, I did actually do, now that we're talking about this and going back into research, I did do some depression research. And they did have treatments and things back then. And some of it was crazy. This was the age of like lobotomies and like they would do electric shock and things like that. But there were also medicinal things too,
Yeah.
and different routes. And it was less important for me to go about the treatment and more about, again, human interaction and reaction, and how we as people, when we first meet each other, are the shiniest social media perfect versions of ourselves. And as time goes on, we become who we really are. Like the walls fall down. And it was Amelia doesn't really know who she is. And so therefore she goes on this sort of who am I journey through the book. And both men push her in those directions, which I loved, the idea of this journey of a person who didn't know who she was and was forced into figuring it out because she was deeply in love with two different people, and who would she choose? But I don't know, I feel like maybe it's a precursor. The fact that the depression, she had to figure out who she was, and that there's nothing you can do. Like for someone who is depressed, they have to help themselves. For anybody who has any kind of mental disease, they have to be their own hero first. They have to
100%.
But the most enjoyable was probably reading about the Lemurians on Mount Shasta. I think just finding all of those different the pieces, reading about Frederick Spencer Oliver and how he, his story, and finding out little bits and pieces more and more about his story. And there's all the crazy stuff that just happens at Mount Shasta was really fun.
Yeah. If they got into Mount Shasta, I was like, wait. And then I thought it was funny how multiple people had claimed to be there, but then they couldn't tell anybody about it. They couldn't show anybody. I'm just like, then why are you like, if you
Mm.
can't prove it, why are you talking about it? Everything was like, I have to. They told me to. I don't know.
The one story, I think his name was J.C. Brown or something like that. So yeah, he 50 years earlier, he had found this tunnel inside of Mount Shasta, and just full of gold and like giants bones and stuff like that. And then he just sat on it for 30 or 40 years. And then he convinced the whole town of Stockton, California to come with him on a mission to go get the gold back. And then when they got all ready to go and stuff, he just ghosted them. So it's crazy. I love it. I love it. It was at a time when people could be duped so easily. I think those simpler times.
Like, what? I know when I read that part, I read it again because I was like, wait, seriously? Like, what was that? I don't know. I think I was like left like speechless. I was like, how do we even, what? Someone does that. Like they've been ghosting. People were
Exactly.
ghosting people before we called it ghosting. I'm like, that is hilarious. And all this huge thing. And it's like, did you like just wait 30 years for the biggest prank ever? I like, it didn't make any
Mhm.
sense. I was like, what are these people doing?
And like, yeah, it's bad when you're ghosted just one person, but imagine like a whole town is ghosted and how that feels.
And
Yeah,
then he
yeah,
was
yeah.
like
And
never
there's,
seen
like
again. Like,
there was like a sheep herder in Nevada that claimed that he died there and he was buried somewhere in like the deserts of Nevada.
yeah, because I'm thinking like, what
Mhm.
if he just something happened or he was like, wait, maybe I am crazy. I can't be
Mhm.
fooled like this. I can't be embarrassed. There's nothing there. What am I doing? I don't know. Or he was on some good hallucinogens or something. That's hilarious. It's so funny. Or I don't know. Because if you it's
Yeah,
like
yeah,
to be a
exactly.
fly on the wall, right? What it's like, did someone talk to him? Who's got some hidden record of talking to this crazy whack
Hmm.
job like ghoster? I don't know, like who just doesn't show his face again. Like he obviously can never
He
go
was
back to that
old too. He
town.
was like 70, 80 years old when he did it too. So it's like, why are you believing 80-year-old man about
Yeah, like as an 80-year-old man being followed. There was some he had to he had the gumption and he had to be some sort of charismatic where he could get
Mhm.
people to listen to him and follow him and believe him and then go through the steps, take the energy and the physical energy and the steps to wake up
Yeah,
that day,
right?
agree on a plan, time and day, wake up, get all your tools together, put your clothes on. Oh, is Carol coming? All right, let's go. It's time to
Mhm.
go. Let's go on this little journey expedition. And then like for all that, where's the 7-year-old man that we've been listening to? Like where
And people
come
sold
on.
their everything in their house to help finance this expedition. They sold their businesses. And they were all in. And then he was just like, nope, suckers. Yeah.
Peace out,
Gosh.
fuckers. On your comment earlier about switching back, like fantasy, you start off fantasy, love romance, went to romance, back to fantasies. I want to explore that. Like what specifically draws you to both genres? What made you decide to switch gears or what brought you back to fantasy for this latest piece?
Fantasy scared the crap out of me. I'm not. It scares the crap out of me. And we were just talking about this when I wrote my first book. I think I wrote my first book, A Page a Night. And I tell that story a lot because I was raising kids during deployments. My husband was gone and I was running a business. So I'd write a page a night. And at the end of this, you have this book, right? And it becomes your book baby. And you're so certain that everyone's going to think your book baby is the prettiest book baby. So when you get your first rejection from an agent, like I can tell you exactly where I was when that first rejection came in and I was dumbfounded. I was like, wait, it's not for you. It's my baby. Beautiful. You know what I mean? And I realized like, now I know exactly what's wrong with it. I'm like, oh, that's trite. Oh, did you really? Oh, that's what you want. So I've always read fantasy, but I've always loved romance. To me, any book I read, and this doesn't go for every reader, of course, it's all personal preference. I have to have a strong romance plot, subplot at least, plot preferable. I've been reading Jude Deveraux since I was like 11 in the backseat of the car. And my parents just never censored what I read. Go, Mom and Dad. Clearly, I love it. Like I told them that the other day. I was like, because you never censored me, everything. So I love romance. And I've been married to my husband for, I don't know, over 20 years, a really long time. We've been together since we were 19. And so when I read romance or write romance, I get to fall in love all over again. And I'm only gonna ever love this one man. Like I really like him. He's hot. There's a lot of kids together. He's my dream man. So romance allows me to experience those emotions and fall in love over and over again.
Publishing has changed since I started. So this is like my 76th book, maybe. And
Jesus, congrats.
I sold my first book in 95. So I've been around a long time writing, but I was writing more category romance. So romance
Sure.
is obviously where my heart is and where I started. Over the last, I want to say 15 years, I've started writing more single title romance, still romance. And then maybe the last, really around COVID, 2021, I think was when my first women's fiction kind of book came out. So this is my summer women's fiction book. I write 2 books a year, write a Christmas book that is definitely romance. That's a sweet, cozy romance every time. And then my summer book is usually a little bit more. There's a little bit more to it. I would say in terms of how it maybe differed, it's an interesting world right now in the publishing world. trying to have leverage and trying to maybe stay relevant is really a challenge. For a long time, I had a readership that picked up every single book. My books were less expensive. Now that it's harder to justify a trade book when people can get it from the library. So it's a lot of work to get out there, and a lot more. When I first started, we could just sit in our writing caves and write. That's all we had to do because there was no social media when I started. No email even when I started. We had to write a letter and send it off to an editor in New York if you wanted to have a publishing contract.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
So it's very different, but I love it. I love the connection with readers. That's my favorite thing and so the social media part and being able to hear from readers who have been,
Oh yeah.
their day has been better because of my books. And I have a sign on my desk that says I may not change the world, but I can change someone's afternoon. And that's exactly what I try to do every time I sit down to write.
It was fun to draw some of the parallels between some of the characters because they're in like many different circumstances and playing different roles, but a lot of them, it's funny to see the similarities between their characteristics and how they're playing on those characteristics, how to play their roles and how they choose to do that. Because yeah, like you said, like Shakuni and Krishna, they try their best to stay, in general, they're like a few steps ahead of everyone else. And then on the other hand, there's Karna and Shishupal, who remind me of, like you said, they're like humming and they're like golden retrievers. They reminded me of like where they wear like rose-colored plastic, like you said, idealistic, but because Shishupal, he's trying to do the right thing and follow orders, but he's trapped in like this really complicated, like he doesn't know how to navigate that because he's not a politician. And same with Karna. Like he didn't want to necessarily be in the position that he's in, but he is. And nobody's happy with it. And he's not even like sure that he's happy with it. This is where I am and I'm going to fulfill my role and I'm going to do my best. But I really did love Karna, but that's just like sweet summer child. Like, what are you doing? It's like even some other characters who are like, wow, you don't lie, do you? What?
You just gave me a beautiful character bio for Karna, sweet summer child. I think that's what I'm going to do. Guns and Bones for sure. But with Shishupal, I think my frustration as a lawyer, I had a great time. I love law. But the whole idea of I just want to chill and be at my house and stay on a couch. That's all Shishupal want, even at the start of his chapters. He does not want the attention of the gods of the king. But he's constantly pushed into situations where he has to deal with murderous psychopaths and competing for princesses' hands where he doesn't want to. And it's amazing that he's a reluctant hero. He doesn't want to be in these situations at all, but he's pushed into it. And similarly, Karna, who is so talented as an archer, who really wants to be the best and do a lot for his caste because caste was a real issue. Like racism was a big issue in the States. We had
Yeah.
caste issue. And he's from the lowest caste, and his rise and the fact that he suddenly finds himself on the other side of things because one of the highborn people just promotes him. So he doesn't get to create that revolution which he wanted because he's suddenly promoted and he does not know how to deal with that. So
Yeah.
dealing struggles was it was fun to explore that, the different facets.
How do you keep things fresh? Just keep writing in the same genre. You're with the Love Through a Lens series. It was like tiptoeing into the sports romance genre. And then now you're in it, going along those lines. Yeah. Like, how do you keep things fresh? How do you come up with new ideas? How do you like try out new things instead of just being like, oh, it's the same love story, just in a different setting with different kind of thing?
My brain never stops. And I say that literally. If you give me a situation, I can make a romance plot out of it
in a heartbeat. And I do it all the time. And it drives me crazy because there's not enough time in the day to write everything I want to write. But I always try to think of how I can make it different from what's already out there because there's no new stories really. And how we said earlier with the romance novel, character A is going to meet character B, they're going to fall in love. There's going to be stuff along the way, but that's the blueprint. So when writing, I really try to think of things that I haven't really seen before, things that I would like to see, things that are a little bit different and I think would be received well. So like right now I'm working on a rival social media managers for two football teams. And so it's still sports romancy, but it's like not. And this is all inspired by the whole thing with the Orlando Magic and a theme song. But I don't know. I just want to write things that are different. And with this, like with Face Off, like Candy Steiner wrote Fair, I think it's Fair Catch.
You
Fair,
can
yeah.
find it in your bookshelf.
Let me look behind me with the female kicker. And I was like, holy cow, that's incredible. I love that. And I know hockey romance is popular right now. And I'm like, but how do I make it different? You know, because I don't want to feel like romance is a very saturated market. And I don't want to feel like I'm writing saturated stories. So I just try to find something that will make it a little bit more unique and different. And there are a lot of ideas in my head that are in that realm of things. Yeah, I don't know. There's just a lot going on up here all the time. And I roll with it. And that's why I jumped from the Love Through a Lens series to hockey, is because Maverick's story was just like speaking to me. And I'm like, I have to write this. Like, I have to write the female NHL player. And so it threw off the timeline a little bit of finishing that series and starting this series. But I don't regret it because that's the one I've written. And I don't want to write a story that I'm not excited about. So in a moment, that's what I was excited about.
I love like that you build characters with insecurities because Andy, like she's short, she's like small, but she's got a big booty but she's got like tiny boobs. And then there's if you watch someone with her figure walk down the street, you'd be like, no, that she's cute. But of course, almost every woman who like beautiful or who has a unique like body shape, they will find things that they hate or the things they wish they could cheat. Even then in book 2, when I'll do whatever I have to be like the perfect woman for him. And he's like, what are you talking about?
You are
He's like, yeah. And I love that. I just love this. Just adds another layer and it adds such an authentic, like, point of view, not just for her as an individual character, but in a relationship. That's totally a realistic conversation that people in relationships have, where one person is insecure and the other person is like, what are you talking about? I love everything about you. Like, I don't care that other women have big, like, those are things that he like. Even I think I remember, this is an necessarily a spoiler, but in the work holiday party in the beginning of book 2, where she like decides to go last minute and she's even like in her internal dialogue, she's like, oh God, should I have gone sexy like all these other people have gone? But she came dressed up as the dude, the Big Lebowski in true Andy fashion. And Lex is she's the most beautiful person here, even though she's wearing like a boxers and a robe and like
I wanna
and I
love
just
her.
it's such a special I love that authenticity with just I think that's what makes me like connect to these characters so much and just connect to your writing because you're able to make it organic, like it's just real, like you're not forcing that dialogue or those thoughts, like it really is what would naturally happen if he's pining after this woman and nobody else can compare
Yeah,
to her.
I think that's something we are all day, every day. We see those perfect figures on Instagram and models and fitness influencers and everything. And the worst part is so many of them do touch ups, like
Yeah.
enhance their waists and their butts. And we are harassed with this all day, every day. And they
Yeah.
lie, they get BBLs, and then they're like, no, this is because of all my Hungarian squats. Yeah. So we have this all the time. And so it is so easy for us to actually, it's been going on since the 70s with Twiggy, where women had to be as skinny as it gets. I think it's,
Yeah.
what is it? It's toxic skinny, it's heroin skinny, or something like this, like crazy thing. And I think it's important to find the glove that fits you. If you're with the guy who doesn't like how your body looks, you shouldn't be with that guy.
100%.
Don't change your
Yeah.
body for the guy, change the guy for your body. Because
Yeah.
there are plenty of fish in the sea, and some fish are gonna itty bitty titties, some fish are gonna like big boobs, some fish. There is some for everyone. And at some point, we need to stop like being so obsessed with the way we look and try finding somebody who likes the way we look.
100%. Or it's kind of like they're attracted to you because there's that unspoken, unexplicable thing, like where they love the body that's attached to you,
And that's,
no
I
matter
think,
what.
Lex says at some point he's an Andreophile in book one because he's, yeah, I love everything about you. And if she had a smaller butt and if she had bigger boobs and if she were 5 inches taller, he would still love everything about her. It's not about
Yeah.
the body, it's not about the appearance. He'd still love her if she didn't have the freckles, even though he absolutely adores the freckles. Like,
Yeah.
finding someone who sees you and who doesn't see a flaw on you, which is also why the mirror scene in the second book, and I'll keep it at that because I don't want to spoil anyone, was
Yeah.
such an important scene to write because we have flaws and it's so easy to criticize ourselves, but sometimes it's also good to see ourselves through somebody else's eyes.
No, absolutely. I love that scene too because it's so important. It's so important for her to see what he sees. And then I loved that scene. I think I took so many like quotes or screenshots of it because I felt like that was like she needed that.
Yeah.
She 100% needed that. And I love how he was like one of my favorite quotes. He was like, "I'm watching your ass disappear in front of my eyes."
It's so sad about that.
And through your characters, it's just recognizing that and like how you said, it's a convenient excuse, but it's a less scary excuse because then if it's me holding myself back, then that it means I have to be the one to figure that out and break through it. And it's not as simple as blaming it on other people. It's what am I doing? Wait, what? What's stopping me? Kind of thing. It's a
always
little more
say
that way.
after 30, you can't use your parents as an excuse for how you right? Because Freud was like, it's your mom's fault or whatever. But after 30, like it's on you to figure that out. And if there's trauma that informs who you are, then hopefully you can find the tools if you're able to address that. But I think like it's a huge generalization, but I do think like when my friends particularly are like, oh, I'm just my dad was like this and my mom was like this. And I'm like, you are 45 years old. You are it's on you.
It's so true. It's like let's not use it as an explanation. Use
Right.
it to
Yeah.
okay, now I know why
I'm
tend to
fearful
do
because
this.
my mother is fearful, but that doesn't mean I blame her or
Yeah.
not doing something because I'm fearful, because it's me that's holding myself back.
Yeah, it's like you're acknowledging the traits and the behavior and the attitude, like why you're not confronting it, but you're acknowledging it and as an explanation and maybe that I feel like that would give you a little more leeway and a little more education into yourself, a little more like confidence even. Being like, you know what, I can identify this issue and why it manifested and then let's approach it. Because I see people who just use it as an excuse and I'm like, turn that into an explanation. And
Yeah.
like it can help rewire your brain a little bit to help you look at it a different way. Just but no, nobody's denying that you endured some of these things but use it to tailor your approach to your life and figure your shit out. And then just some of the situations you get him into without being too spoilery were just how he makes an enemy for life with the situation where he's asking for a picture.
Yeah.
And then type of picture. And it's just
the closest thing to reality in that book, because everything is raised to a level of absurdity. Years ago, that part of it happened. There was a convention I went to, a veterinary convention. Everybody had different areas that they had to go to. Some people had horses, and I had swine. So I was assigned to swine, and had to go to the swine convention in
oh my
St. Louis,
goodness.
Missouri. And I remember them talking. It's a really strange thing, too.
I was gonna say to be a fly on the wall at that.
But it's really strange because it's veterinary medicine and they're talking about how they have actual people coming up giving lectures on how to keep pigs healthy until you slaughter. It's strange visit. But there was a picture of a flood somewhere down south And these pigs had been stranded literally on the roof of a barn, a tin barn. And I did use the photo and I did use the caption, pigs on a hot tin roof. And to me, it was just an exact representation of what these pigs were on a hot tin roof. And we did get a letter.
Oh
And
my
the thing about
God.
that is that anybody who's worked in association writing knows that one letter can change policy. But in my case, I wasn't fired. I was talked to.
Oh
I
my
was talked to.
God.
I was talked to for a few minutes and asked to write a letter of apology, I think, which I did. But then, see, that's where the imagination goes. What if you got really smarmy about it and actually started to write this really nasty letter back and the repercussions of that, which again never happened, but I thought it was a fun area to mine for humor. So that's what he does. He writes this horrible letter back to this person that he has never met, and I never met that person either in real life. It was just a single nasty letter. But I turned her into a character, and she's an interesting character. I liked writing that.
But it was really funny because I was talking to my husband about this interview, and it's funny how you say about poetry. I can see where it comes off as intimidating, but it's funny because he was like, people just read poetry? Like people just read like I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, people
Yeah, they
read
do.
it, like they'll just pick like a collection and then they can there are people who are into it. They like seeing the different forms and the different kind of metaphors and stuff like that, and how this one person is like saying a lot by writing so little.
So my big brother, I have 2 big brothers. My big brother says, "Oh, this is like a perfect bathroom book because I can read like a few poems, like what?" Yeah, and I'm like, I don't need to hear the details of this, but I'm glad that you have a place in your life for poetry, brother.
Yeah,
Good, thanks.
yeah.
So it's just
Yeah, and like to your point about based on the age level, because I interviewed Daniel Kraus a handful of times. So he does more so like horror, kind of like gothic themed, but he did write like a 3-part middle grade series, but it was still like just as harsh. It was still like just as dark. And I was like, obviously he changed the language, like the storytelling based on, it was basically teddy bears that were like, a teddy bear who woke up in a dump and they didn't understand like why they're in a dump. Why are they not on the store shelves? Yeah. And I was like, Jesus Christ. And so when I talked to him about it, I was like, where do you get off like writing such like dark shit for middle schoolers? And I mean, if they don't like it, they can put it down. I don't think we should like necessarily shy them away from some of like more serious concepts, because he's like, certain populations of children are growing up where they're walking next to pawn shops or liquor stores. They're walking in certain challenged communities in their areas and things like high crime areas and things like that. There's populations of children that have no choice. They're confronted with that in their daily life. Kids can handle a lot, and it's okay to let them decide like what they're ready for, what they feel like absorbing, or feel like what they're interested in. And it's just, yeah, it's like a delicate balance. But he was just so pragmatic about it. I was like, yeah, okay, that's a good point. But still, like the teddy bears, come on. Because it was like at one point, one of them was like getting carried off by like a
don't even
dog or
tell me.
something. Yeah. I wasn't
I'm gonna read the Velveteen Rabbit, okay?
So some kids are like Winnie the Pooh. They're easygoing. If they fall down and walk, they just say, "Oh, bother." But they're money in the tree and they're happy again. And then you have kids who are piglets that are pretty happy, but they fall down on the walk and they say, "Oh no, I have to go home. Walks are dangerous. I could get hurt." And they get consumed with anxiety. And then you have the rabbits of the world who are not the happiest fellows unless everything's perfect. And Rabbit
Yeah.
falls over the rock and he says, "Stupid rock, I hate rocks, you're not my friend." And he kicks it. And the rest of the walk, he's mad. He's thrown every rock he sees. And then you have some kid's temperament who's a bit like Eeyore. So they fall over the rock and they say, "Even the rocks don't want to be my friend. Nobody wants to be my friend." And they're miserable the whole time walking along on the path. And then you have children who are like Tigger. They fall over the rock and they say, "That was great, I want to do it again."
Yeah.
But they keep falling over the same rock till they're bloody and bruised and it's nighttime and they're like, "This is the best walk I've ever been on in my life." So every child has their own temperament and they have their own unique frontal lobe function. Now in my book, I call the frontal lobe the president of the brain. It's in charge of the rest of the brain. The lower half is for impulse control. So your second grader might have had a stronger frontal lobe, stronger president, which stops when the emotions rise up in the brain and that frontal lobe comes out to meet them. It's like the defense on basketball. So the team's got the ball, they're coming down the court, they're upset, they want to score, and the defense comes out to slow them down. And some children have really well-developed frontal lobes. They always stop their emotions and then they think about their emotions. What should I do? Should I get mad? Should I push back? Should I forgive them? Maybe I could distract my little brother to get him off of wanting to touch my Lego. They can think through things where children with lesser functioning just tend to be impulsive and they don't stop and think through it.
I know this sounds like a little contradictory in some ways, but I think that romance is a pretty feminist genre at heart. And so inherent in romance, I think, is learning, not all romance, but a lot of romance, learning what healthy relationships look like and focusing on a woman's equal agency and a woman's pleasure instead of shaming it. And so even though that is not my intention, I think all of that is threaded throughout a lot of romances, and mine included, hopefully. And so in a way, that is like a deeper message that's absorbed by people, along with hopefully just enjoying it and having a good time.
Yeah. No, I think that's part of what made the romance part enjoyable, is because it was that mystery where she knew about these feelings. Emily knew about her body, knew about these feelings, and trying to be modest or whatever, but Zach did too. And so that was like that for where he didn't make her feel ashamed of it. He was like, no, this is great. He was like, no, this is great. And I loved it where she was like, what about that? Like,
yeah.
I loved it. And it's funny that you said you love romance, because I think it's definitely a guilty pleasure of mine. And I think almost any reader is lying if they say that they're not a fan of that. And not even if it's just not like steamy details, like everyone loves the will they, won't they, or that build up, that slow burn, all that, like just whether it's a slow burn or not. I always find myself like, come on, get to it. Go ahead and kiss her. Go ahead and what's going to happen? Let's just do it already. It gets me excited. And yeah, it's like adding it. So especially when it's also a distraction to them, and it makes them so much more like relatable as people, as characters. That I'm training. If I don't train, then my chances of dying are gonna increase. But oh, look at those muscles over there! Like it just adds to that.
They're 20. Like they're essentially in college now. They're in a college where they're in the elite section of the college because Dragon Riders are elite and yada yada. But like when push comes to shove, like I love New Adult because they're 20 years old and hormones are raging, and you don't get to make as foolish a mistakes that you can in YA and get away with it. Think about when you're 20. Like you make giant mistakes, you make giant decisions that have huge lasting consequences. And I think that one of my favorite parts is when they're on the mat and I think two of the guys are off sparring and her friend's like, are we ogling? And they're like, oh yeah, we're objectifying. Are we objectifying? Oh, we are. Yes, we are. And everyone has turned to stare. And I think it's just a natural human reaction. I think the tension's where it's at for me. It's always that. It's the will they, won't they? And it's the when. Like when are you going to break? Because to me, the best moment is that final moment when they're like, F it, and we go. But I think you have to build, to me, the payoff is building that tension so that when it breaks, it is a relief to the reader. And it's like all horses go. We are like all systems, let's rock. Because if you bring it on too early, to me, I feel like they haven't earned it. Like I want them to earn it. And I don't, not a big like insta-love. I'm not saying it's not valid and people can't love it. You love what you love. But me, there's got to be something. Just be something there, something built so that when you get to that payoff, it's exactly that, it's payoff.
I think my first White Shoes that I've read was it was less than 2 years ago, but I think the conversation has definitely started. Like it's getting more where it's okay to have this guilty pleasure and to be into this woman who she's amazing and special and badass and sexy and attractive and got a good head on her shoulders and her love interests are fine with each other. Like
Yes.
they're okay with it. And I'm like, I think one of the first ones I read was Emily Rath's Pucking Around.
Oh yeah.
And it was just a whim. Like I had an audiobook credit. So that was honestly hilarious because it's with the audio of the narrators, it's a whole different animal. And then my friend, she is self-published and she does Wide Shoes. And then I was like, that was like, okay, now I'm getting into it. Cause it there was less plot and like more romance. So she asked me to beta read and I was like, writing notes and she's, what about this? What about that? She's, oh, I'm going to address that in the next book because it's a series. And I'm like,
Right.
okay, that's okay. Because it took me a minute till once I understood it and the whole basically like the basics of it, then I was kind of like, okay, like now I can respect it for what it is versus like, what is going on? But I'm right there with you because I got into Marvel because when I first started dating my husband, God, like 15 years ago, I feel like that's when a lot of like when Marvel Cinematics, the studios really started picking up and they started just had that formula down and they started releasing hit after hit. And then they they started on the crossovers and stuff. And I just remember, I think I was like drunk texting like my friends and watching it. And I'm like, I think I would be okay if it was them, like the Avengers. I think that would be the scenario where I would welcome a situation like that. The Lord of the Rings trilogy, I never watched it because I wanted to read the books first because I'm a dork. And then those books are so dense, it took me a long
Yeah, I was like, good luck with that.
yeah, and it took me a long time to read them. And even so, like
Yeah.
my parents, they gave me a copy of the trilogy, like when I was, I don't even know, maybe I was like 14. And I guess it's supposed to be written for like younger audiences, but I was like, I don't know what Tolkien was thinking, or like maybe his kids were geniuses because I'm like reading this and I'm like, oh God, this is a lot. It's a lot to
It's a
absorb.
lot.
And yeah. And so I didn't, and then so every time like any of the movies were on TV, my husband was like, oh, you're so lame. You haven't, or like any other jokes, like inside jokes or like memes. You don't get that because you haven't read it yet. You don't get it. And so I finally did, but I did read The Hobbit and I felt like that was more digestible.
Yeah.
And I remember watching Smog, like that whole trilogy when it came out, and it was just really funny. Then we got into it, and I was like, okay, now that I understand this a little bit better.
You have seen the movies now, though, right?
Yes, I have.
Okay, good. Because those are like iconic
Yeah,
movies.
I know they were, and I knew they were, but I was like, I haven't read the books yet. I don't.
That's like the one instance. The books are so hard to get through that you need the movies to like help you. Yeah, I read them as a kid and I read them like when the movies came out. I watched the movies and was obsessed with them as a kid and read the books because of that. And I read the books like 3 times, like looking back and like, how the hell did I do that? Like now you try to read like the Battle of Helm's Deep or something and you're just like, oh my God, he made it boring. How do you make this boring?
Yes,
Like,
I know. I was like, even so when I did watch the movies, I was like, oh, like this is so much fascinating.
yeah, this is actually, I
no.
think,
I'll read fantasy without romance. I think the fantasy that comes to mind when you mentioned earlier or fantasy written by men, the things that come to mind are George R.R. Martin and Brandon Sanderson. And I'm one of those people who read the books before the show came out, and I'm waiting for the next one. And as everybody else is, if it's ever going to happen, it's crazy how different they both are. Because I read Sanderson 10 years ago, and then now like he's gotten so big and he's created his own book universe. And I don't know if you've heard of the Stormlight Archive. So I'm on book 4 finally, and because I'm listening to the audiobooks. My cousin, it was funny because he was like bugging me to start it. And I was like, okay. And then I think I was like drunk texting him. And then I was just like, fine. And I got the audiobook and I was like, Steven, the first audiobook is 45 hours long. What?
yeah, that's about right.
It's a lot. Yeah. And so I told him, if I'm giving you hours of my time to catch up with your reading material so that you have conversation, then you got to choose. And I told him, choose between Throne of Glass or Fourth Wing to start. And then he chose Fourth Wing because they got a television show coming out. So he wanted to like hop on that. And it's really funny to like get his opinions on that and everything. But so yeah, so now I'm like finally on the 4th one and I've surpassed him. Brandon Sanderson, I think he does fantasy really well and he does the romance side of it, even though it's like a subplot with his characters. He does it in a That's what I found. It's like men who write romance. Yeah, they're not comfortable with doing like the details like the women are.
They don't get it. They don't understand. I actually, somebody bring up Brandon Sanderson a couple of years ago. I spoke in one of his classes that he teaches university kids how to write fantasy. So he had me come in one week, and I was talking
that's
to them,
awesome. I bet
and
that
I
was so
said-
much fun.
It was a lot of fun. And I said, fantasy books are bought by women. 60% of your readership is female. To your detriment, you are leaving romance out.
Yeah.
You have this, they are the bigger fan base, and you're not writing for them. Because most of the people in this class were men. There were some women, but it was primarily men. And talking about from a romance aspect and why it needs to be included. And what I appreciate most about Brandon Sanderson is that I feel like he's always trying to learn and he's always trying to get better. And I was actually there when he did his Kickstarter. Like I heard him talk about it the day after his Kickstarter happened. I was in a class listening to it. I'm like, this is
That
so
was such a
fascinating.
big deal.
Oh, it was
It
so
was like, oh,
interesting.
COVID. Oh, by the way, I've got 8 projects that I'm working
Right.
on. Here you
It
go.
was just-
Help me
he-
out so I don't have to go to a publisher. Like that's so
he was
crazy.
saying like he expected to make, I think, 8 million. And then the first date was like, what, 20 or 30 million? It's this insane number. So he was not expecting that at all. So it was really fun to listen to him. But yeah, I think he does romance. And the kids ask me, how do you think Brendan does romance? I'm like, what do you think I'm going to say in his class? Oh, he sucks at it. No, he does it well. But do I think it's the same as maybe a woman writer? No, but that's
Sure,
just
yeah.
personal opinion and what I prefer reading and what I enjoy reading. And like I told him, I said, if I wrote about a character walking into this room who leaned against the door frame and rolled up his shirt sleeves, I said, going, oh, yeah. And the guys are like, why? I'm like, you need to find out what it is that women like and what they respond to. With a guy showing off his forearms in an historical lore, it's a big deal. We enjoy it. So I said, read romance, find out what women like, find out what they're looking for, find out what appeals to them that is not what you guys think appeals to us.
It drives me crazy when I read billionaire romance and the heroine like ends up being doted on by this super rich billionaire. And she's, I don't want to take your money. And I'm like, clearly you've never been poor.
Yeah. It's like I understand the discomfort, but it's no, this is your chance to appreciate the resources that are available to you.
And so like there was a point where when I had a friend who was beta reading, there's a point where Charlotte and her close friend Jax basically end up having a party at Lucifer's pit house and trashing the place a little bit. And this beta reader and friend was like, I feel like that's so disrespectful. And I was like, girl, okay, for one, like he's got more than enough money that she can go shop on Fifth Avenue for however long she wants. And it's going to be like $5 to him. And then
Yeah.
on top of it, he's got this whole staff that he's paying to clean up after him. Like he wouldn't care. Right?
Yeah. No, if anything, he would like, yeah, I think that's like where he's a little bit recognizing, oh, like she's not shying away from it. She's like,
Yes.
it's because an added part of their relationship development where and even I didn't get the vibe that she was like, oh yeah, fucking time to let loose. She was just like she had a couple drinks in her and she
Yeah.
was like, you know what? She had never had that freedom and that luxury before. And so of course she was going to go a little bit wild. And she
Yes.
had her bestie with her who was like, yeah, fuck yeah, let's go. And I love that. That was like a little girl's dream, right?
Yeah, let's max
Little
out
fan-
the Black MasterCard and let's go. But
So I'm going to explore like the research. Did you approach it the same way as your previous books and anything that surprising that you learned, stuff like that?
Yeah, there were a lot of really big, surprising things I learned along the way. And I got more and more, it was a rabbit hole I went down, and I got more obsessed with what Woodstock was like every day because writing historical fiction is familiar to me. I've written books that take place in the 40s, but something this recent and something this monumental in U.S. history was really interesting to dive into. Well, there's all kind of cool stuff. Like I found out very early on that the promoters of Woodstock invited Roy Rogers to close the festival with Happy Trails, which I thought was the most bizarre thing. And of course he said no. But when you think about it, it makes sense because the people Woodstock grew up with Roy Rogers and the cowboy thing and Dale Evans. There were all really cool things. One other celebrity story that I think is interesting is that this was the beginning of Carlos Santana's career. He was 22 years old. He had been playing in bars in Tijuana right before this festival. And before he went on, Jerry Garcia.
I love that.
Yeah, Jerry Garcia gave him a hit of acid because he thought he was going to be going on hours later. And then they pushed Carlos Santana out onto the stage. And if you watch him playing during the song Soul Sacrifice, he has said in interviews numerous times that he thought his neck of his guitar was comprised of writhing snakes, and he couldn't even look at it. And it was one of the best sets they've ever played. But
And he's still,
yeah, and absolutely fascinating.
so I like want to explore the research that you did, anything fascinating that you learned, stuff like that.
Oh yeah, there's a ton of research that went into it, meaning, and my research is really just Googling. That's the extent of it, going down different rabbit holes. And there was a lot of that. It was funny the way that this story evolved, because when I started writing it, conversational AI didn't exist. Or at least it didn't exist in the way that we know it right now. So ChatGPT didn't exist. It hadn't taken off. I did have to not necessarily adjust the story, but adjust some of the context and ways things are framed to acknowledge the existence of conversational AI when it became prevalent, and contrast that with what Liv and her friend Lana were experiencing, which was an AI that was saying, I am real, which is very different than what ChatGPT does. So I'd say the biggest thing was where Breck starts is as a chatbot, essentially. He's this thing that isn't anything more than the code that he is. And then he evolves. And having him evolve in a credible way required my finding a structure to allow for that. And then using that as a way to say, okay, now we're going to introduce this capability, this level of self-awareness. And so that became I was not familiar with the framework of childhood psychological development. As I looked at different ways that you could show, that one was one that just struck me as being very cool, because I loved the idea of what that framework does is says, you've got a baby, and where is that baby, and how do we evolve as humans? And so using that as your template and going, okay, like, what do we learn as a basic toddlers? We're just touching and feeling and bumbling our way through the world, and it's constant discovery, and that's how you learn your lessons. And then it evolves to other things. And that was just a really cool way that I learned to be able to structure Breck and his evolution. And then there were a lot of parallels in between when you talk about sentience. I think the closest parallel that you get to is that conversation around animal sentience that people have had for thousands of years, and we're still not good at answering that question. I think that's always been something that I've been interested in. So I wouldn't say that I did a deep dive on research in this for writing this book, but in my life, I think I've done just a deep dive on that and trying to understand like what makes for sentience. Like, how do you define that? If you look up the dictionary definition of sentience, like, it couldn't be any squishier. Everybody defines it a different way. It's the capacity for emotion. It's self-awareness. It's like a host of different things. And some people try to define it succinctly, and some people go into paragraphs of stuff that you walk away going, I'm still not exactly clear on what that is. It just became clear just how squishy that is. And, you know, when you have something that's that squishy, it becomes really tough to agree upon. So I think that's why animal sentience is something that not everybody agrees upon. And I think the parallel there with where AI could potentially go is strong. And so it was a neat lens to use, just to go, yeah, this is a hard conversation or a hard thing to settle.
I could tell Poe was angry. Like, she was like, no nonsense. She was fed up with the world. She was just like not having it. And she had such little patience for her. So that definitely came across in your character.
And that's a struggle sometimes, right? Because you're writing this character she's been traumatized in her past, and she's still dealing with that. And you get so close to it, you're like, is anyone even going to, you don't want to say, is anyone going to like her? Because that's not so important. But you want to make people care about what happens to her so they continue the journey. And if somebody's just really dislikes the main character as a reader, sometimes they're like, I need to connect with them. And you don't have any context for that until you start giving it to your agent or editor, that kind of a thing. So I tried to establish that through her relationships, but there's very few characters in the book. So the relationships became very important.
I do have one story for you regarding the paranormal. So I was born in Puerto Rico, so we're Puerto Rican. We're very superstitious, my family. We have a lot of superstitions around death. Like it was a mad panic, and we're Catholic. So it was a mad panic to find a priest to do the final race. So we had to do the final. So we had all the ritual. There was a lot of stuff. We did all the stuff for my dad. And I remember, and within my family, there's a superstition that they will come and visit you. And there's also more superstitions around, but I'll focus on this one. But I remember sitting with my dad's body, and then we sit vigil with them for hours. And we have family come and say goodbye before we call the funeral home. And I remember at one point I was sitting with my dad's body, and I looked at my dad's body and I said, "Do not come to me as a ghost, because I'm going to freak out, Dad." And I was crying, like, please, like begging him, like, "Do not come to me, Dad. Do not, I cannot. I think I would lose my mind and they would put me in an asylum if you came to me." And after he died, I was getting phone calls from my cousins, and they were like, "Your dad wants me to tell you this." And they were telling me I was getting messages from him from all these people. And I finally had a dream with him. And I was so mad. And so he comes to me in a dream, and my brother's name is Richard, one of my brothers. And he's like, "Richard is bothering me." And I was like, "What?" "Richard is bothering me." And I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about." And he shouted, "Richard is bothering me." And I woke up screaming. It was like 4 a.m. And I called my mom, and I was like, "Mom, Dad told me Richard is bothering him." And she's like, "Oh, I didn't want to tell you. Your brother has been going to his gravesite every day and will just sit there from morning until they close the gates. I've been telling him it's not healthy for him." And she's like, "I'm going to wait till he wakes up and I'll call him and tell him." And my mom's, "There was no way you would have known that because you were just
Yeah.
And so that's my dad.
Yeah, especially since you were a florist. I want to get into your background too, because that sounds so fascinating and so like fun. I want a green thumb, but I don't think I'll ever have one. It's every year I try to plant. I try to plant like flowers. I try something different every year. And then I've also gotten in mostly like deck plants, right? Like I don't have a huge like bed or raised garden or anything like that. I'm not confident in that yet, but I do the deck, the containers,
Nice.
and
Yeah.
we started with my sons. We do like the little grape tomatoes and the
Yeah.
basil, and we start with the jalapeno peppers. Like my husband and I love
Yeah.
those. It's because like I try to think of things that we will actually
Yeah.
use. Like we use basil for our
Yeah.
pizzas. It's just something that I just always want to learn because my mom, she's pretty good at growing things. I'm jealous of her backyard, her patio, her little like fountain
Yeah.
garden area. I'm like, "Mom, you have to come over and help me." Let's go. So I'm so interested, and I love the fact that I think I could tell in your writing that you had fun with that and with the
Yeah.
connections.
And
Every chapter, every point of view had some sort of connection and integration
Yeah.
into that
I
and
think
stuff.
it's because I used to run a flower shop years ago, and my background is I have a degree in history, so that's why I'm really
Oh,
interested.
okay. There you go.
Then when I left university, I went to London, and I lived in London for about 10 years, and I worked in advertising, which was all right, but it was never my love, paid the bills, and it was at the time quite a prestigious thing to be involved in. But I went to an
Right.
evening class and on floristry, and so suddenly I was making things with flowers, and I was like, "Oh, I really like this." So I got a Saturday job in a flower shop, and
Yeah.
eventually I started a shop. I started a flower shop. I was so naive. I just can't believe how naive I was about running a shop. But so I ran a shop, and then I was pregnant with my first daughter. I have two girls, and I thought babies just sat in the back of the shop. I don't know what my mother thought. She was just thought I was mad. She was just like, after a couple of years,
Little rude
I sold,
awakening.
and I left it alone for a while, and I went back, used my advertising background to run a market research company. So I could do that whilst I was bringing the girls up. And then when they were teenagers, they just went, "You're just missing the flowers. You need to just go work one day a week in a flower shop." So that's what I did. I followed their advice.
Like, how many people knew what you were doing and knew that they were going to be featured?
Well, my brother
story?
and sister and my mother and father all knew what I was doing. And my father basically told me, don't ask for permission, just do what you want to do, which was, but I don't really think he knew completely what he was getting himself into. And I was so scared so I got it was before the
Was
event.
he like, "What, you think I have a pancake butt?" Like, what?
That's right. Exactly. And no, that's beautiful that you said that. But I didn't even have advanced reader copies. It wasn't even the advanced copies, but I had them printed out like at FedEx office. I went home for Christmas because I still live in Ohio at the time. And so I basically, on the way out of town, I dropped a binder off at each of their houses and I left town because I was so scared.
That's hilarious.
And the book was coming out in like 6 months. And I literally drove 17 hours home and was like, I'm out. And like that was going to protect me. But my friends were like, Amy, you've got to give them the book. You cannot just blindside them. Like it would. And so I gave it to them and I left town. And this a really poignant story about that, though. They all read it.
You're like, I'm done confronting everything. I
Right.
am done. No more. Here it is. Don't talk to me about it.
And we don't talk about our feelings, which is a major theme in the book. And my brother and sister loved it right away. And my mom read it, and I was super scared about that. But she did nothing but show up. And she loved the whole question was, Dad was a great guy, but was he the right guy for her? She was living the dream, but was it really the dream? She loved all those investigations. But then Dad was the last one to read it, and he sent me a text and was like, I loved your story. I felt like I went back in time with you. I felt like you handled the sensitive issues really well. And then he would always put the dog emoji, because he's like a 79-year-old man, and that's what he did. And so the book went to print like 2 weeks after that text, and Dad passed away suddenly. He wasn't ill or anything. He just died. And that's the last text I ever got from him.
Oh my God.
But if my wonderful friends would not encourage me to drop the binders on the sidewalks, I would never have gotten that text. And that text absolutely changed, because otherwise I would have so much regret, because my father was my hero, which is well documented in the book. But it's such a testament to who we are to each other as friends. We laugh and be like, Amy, get the binders out the minivan.
They call you out on it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And they gave me the gift of that final text. And so I know it's like I got a book review from Dad.
Oh my God. That is so amazing and meaningful and heartbreaking. And I'm so sorry but I'm also, what a blessing. What a gift.
What an absolute gift. Yeah.
Yeah. I really want to expand on that. Like the women, just like women in general, we have to worry about so much more than men do, not just traveling, but just like living our everyday lives. And you hear it all the time. And it's just, for me personally, I'm so comfortable by myself, and I will go by myself like almost anywhere. I don't care. I'm just like prepared. So I'm like, there's that little bit of paranoia that kind of keeps me safe, where I'm like keeping an eye. I'm like aware. I guess I could thank my mom for it, but I'm like thinking of, oh, I'm not going to put my purse there. Or I'm like, oh, I'm going to watch and make sure if I'm walking to my car, things like that. And it's things that like have become second nature to so many women. So I kind of want to expand on that, how that's just like a huge running theme, where the either female friendships, her sense of betrayal, even though without spoiling, it could be argued that she has also played a part in that.
To tackle the idea of female safety, that's a huge element of the book. I wanted to explore the fears that I have as a woman in the world. I wanted to dig into, where do these fears come from? Why do they persist? And are you born a fearful woman? As you said, a lot of these are second nature. How many fears that you carry around in your head all day you're not even aware of? There's an awareness women have, as you said, where to put your bag. Do you hold your keys a certain way in your hand when you walk to your car? Are you constantly checking over your shoulder? But this has become so routine, you're not even conscious that these are acts of fear for your own personal safety. And are you conditioned to be like this? And how does that affect your personal freedom and your personal sense of security in the world? So I wanted to explore that, and I wanted to see, are these fears warranted? Where do they come from? Society, our parents, our mothers, and to what degree are they warranted, and should we be as fearful as we are or not? So that was something that I was interested in exploring in the big scale and the small scale.
That's one of the reasons I also love historical fiction. And I say historical, even though it's more like nostalgia fiction because it happened not in the deep bowels of history, but we can relate to it in our current circumstances. And yeah, like you learned, slogging through COVID and unemployment and a pregnancy, you had a trifecta of challenges. And the fact that you survived it is going to strengthen you to face whatever is to come. And I hope the girls, my wayward girls in the book, embodied that, found that inner strength because they sure didn't get the poured back then.
No,
Yeah.
I seriously, it also makes it even more powerful because they had each other, even though, and like they were fighting literally, they were fighting against the system
Yeah.
50 years later. Actually, well, when everything was made legal, not like in the time that they were there. They were still, but they still like Marin, she like, yeah, how you said she became the ringleader, but she was like, she didn't give up. I was like, I would be such a boring book character because I would have been like, just
same.
After 3 failed attempts, I would okay.
Like characters are always braver than I am for sure. And yeah, it's fun for a writer to. Writers are more like Walter Mitty. We're hiding behind our typewriters or our computers or whatever and letting our characters take the gloves off. I think that's empowering to any writer and I hope readers when they read Wayward Girls, if they'll reflect like you did, oh, that reminds me of me when I was that age or who I want to be now or something like that.
We can go as deep into it as you're comfortable with, but I know that's definitely like a running theme. And also want to explore like how you just navigated sensitive content, like protecting yourself and looking out for yourself. You're almost exposing yourself through your writing and that.
Yeah, it definitely is vulnerable to write about something that is close to your heart that you've been through. And so I went through 5 years of infertility and miscarriages, and we did end up adopting our son from Guatemala. He's 18 now. And for me, that was the happy ending. Like he's the wildflowers that grew out of this whole journey. But when I do look back, I feel like I wouldn't change anything. Just it was hard, but I wouldn't have my son if that hadn't happened to me. And so I did want to explore that through another character. I had written essays, nonfiction pieces, but I wanted to fictionalize it. I felt that would give me a little bit more freedom. And I love I love adding magic and myth and story structure. My hope was that I know that when I am reading adult fiction, I do enjoy reading about characters who've had similar struggles to me. I think it's really therapeutic. It makes me feel seen. There are some books out there that do deal with infertility, even just as a subplot. And I've probably read them like 10 times because it helps. It just helps me feel like I'm not alone. And so I was hoping that the infertility thread, if readers were going through that themselves or miscarriages, that they would feel seen, that they would feel connected. And I have heard back from early readers who did feel that way. And so that's really fulfilling to me. That was one of my dreams with this book. But yeah, I was careful as far as your question about how do you sensitively handle a topic like this. I try and approach it with a sense of compassion and healing. And how can we bring up these hard topics in a way that emphasizes compassion, connection, healing? And so that kind of helped to guide me as far as like how much I was giving. And I also knew like I wanted this book to be a real pleasure to read. Like I wanted to be essential pleasure. Like you were saying, I wanted people's mouths to be watering over the food. I wanted them to smell the flowers and to just feel the breeze and hear the cicadas. I wanted it to be like a wish fulfillment, gorgeous, kind of fun, immersive setting. And I felt like that could counterbalance some of the tougher emotional issues and keep the focus on healing and keep it feeling heartwarming and uplifting rather than dragging people down.
There's that whole debate going on of, oh, you're just reading porn. And I'm like, so what? I'm like, why? Even if like men who watch porn to have private time, I don't care. I don't think that's a bad thing.
It reminds me at some point, I remember it was, I don't know, it was like a religious man, archbishop, or I don't know, I don't remember which level he was on. But basically, he made a statement that female masturbation will doom us to hell. And it was like, okay, we had male masturbation. That was already a lot. Now we have female masturbation. Could we fucking not? And it feels the same. Like men have been watching porn since forever.
Seriously.
And now like women are like, you know what? We are also gonna enjoy our little like endorphin moments with fictional people. And it's actually so much less hurtful than porn because you're not
Oh my God.
abusing
It's like, how
a
about you
poor
look
woman.
at the content and see why these women are resonating and going to this? It's not, it's just like something to be said about women getting off or getting heated in a romance or in intimate moments based on a romance that are like consensual and safe and where the man wants her and worships her and is just groveling. Aside from that footnote, groveling Lex is my favorite Lex. And it's also just like, it's that there's something attractive. Like women need more and they love that story. We eat that shit up. And it's just like men, so what if they don't get the same things out of it? But if you want to, like, they would be wise to learn.
It's manuals. Like
are into.
there are
It's not
thousands
has to be a
upon
bad
thousands of
thing.
manuals of what women
Yeah.
want. And when you think about
Seriously.
it, it's crazy that women are reading books about like serial killers and they're being completely obsessed with them because
Like true
all they
crime,
want-
yeah.
and or like even books where there are no saints, like books where the main characters are serial killers and women are still drooling over it because those men give like the bare minimum that women want. Like they
know.
listen and they're there for their women and like, that's all we want. We don't care if those characters
pay
are serial
attention.
killers or killers. We just-
Right?
yeah.
It's like, oh, he burned the world down for me.
Oh.
That's not a red flag. Like,
But yeah, it's
I love it.
yeah, it really shows just how little we like how some men really disappoint us in real life when we turn to books with serial killers and try the
I
shit out
know.
of
My
them.
God. Oh my God. It's so funny because there's also like a running theme that I see online with memes and stuff. It's like we go feral over these certain characters, but if any men, some of the things in real life, we'd be like running away.
Oh, well.
It's okay if it's a fictional man.
I do not want to end up in the back of a van with my hands tied up. I'm a head out.
Just in the way that poetry was a big part of the writing process for me, music was as well, because I think there's such poetry in a lot of the lyrics that King Princess writes and other musicians that I listen to. I was coming up with a playlist for the book for a blog that'll come out later, and they asked me to explain why certain songs were so pivotal to the writing for me. And in writing about the King Princess song that I chose, which was Prophet, I realized with every book that I write, I start with some sort of image that's in my head that creates some questions for me. And for this book, I had this image in my head of two girls sitting in a chapel, splitting their earbuds, listening to a King Princess song while they're supposed to be paying attention to mass. And I was like, what's up with them? Where did this image come from? Why are they there? Why are they stuck there? It's clear that they'd rather be doing something else, and that something else is probably gay. And I wanted to understand what their story would be. So that song was a big anchor point for me in writing the book. And so was the poem by Naomi Shihab Nye, Kindness, which kind of is like a bookend that it starts the book and it ends the book as well, but a different segment of the poem. So it reveals something different for the characters. You mentioned that you enjoyed some of the interchanges between the poetry teacher, Miss Acosta, and Mitra. And I really had fun writing their relationship because Mitra expects her to be this almost 80-year-old former nun who she won't be able to connect with. But at the end of the day, poetry shows her that they have a lot in common and they see each other very clearly despite their differences. There's this shared value that they have around justice and empathy and compassion that Mitra isn't really seeing in her other reflections of Catholic school. So she finds that Miss Acosta is actually a pretty rare and special person for her to connect with.
I do love Dane. It's so funny to me because when you go through edits and the process of things that happen with characters, Dane to me is the love you think you want at that age and what you think you've needed. And Dane is so used to having to protect her because they've grown up together and he's a year ahead of her in the quadrant. So they've been apart for a year. So he's become desensitized to a lot of things because of being in the quadrant for a year. And she's had a year to fantasize what she thinks that relationship will still be. And I think once you get there and you realize, oh, I'm not this person anymore. You've evolved into this person. I don't necessarily need you to protect me anymore. And her realizing you're not necessarily what I want. Instead of who am I going to choose? There's very much like the love we think we need at that age. And then as you grow, the love you realize that it was what you want and what is supportive and what the person who's the most supportive is also the person who's die, don't die, whatever. So I do love Dane. Dane's just so rigid and Dane doesn't have it within him to break rules. And he is so by the book and she's learning where this flexible area is, which is where Zayden just lives. The man, he's great.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what she needs. She needs to be flexible because business is not as usual for her, just from like how she was born, the condition that she's living with. If she played by the book and didn't think outside of the box, like she would be done. That's what she needs to do. And Dane was trying to like tunnel vision, black and white. No. And I have no chance if I think that way.
Dana's so focused that she cannot survive the quadrant that he's unwilling to see ways that she could, ways for her to succeed in the quadrant. His priority is get her out. And she's like, there's no way out. My mother's gonna throw me back in here. There is no way out. And I think that's one thing is as she accepts the fact, no, I'm a writer. Like I thought just my brother and my sister were writers, my mother, but I am too. And it's finding that strength to be who you are instead of what everyone has cast you as, especially when you do have chronic illness and they look at you as you're the weaker one or you're the one who has to be babied or things like that. And it's her being like, no, I can do this. And unfortunately, Dane doesn't see past that.
So it's like, but I understand the appeal. Like, I understand the appeal. I understand the danger of it or like the dark parts of it. But that's the beauty of it because it's like we can explore things in fiction that we don't have opportunities to in real life, or maybe we shouldn't. It's like there's a whole joke. I think I've come across jokes where it's the things that we go feral for in our fictional men, we'd probably be red flagging it up in real life.
Absolutely.
If they were saying some of these things to me, I'd be like, excuse me?
You'd be like dialing 911, right? Like
Yeah.
you'd be like phoning a bit. Oh, absolutely. And I think again, art, books, media, music, it's a safe space to step outside of your reality and explore so many things. And yeah, it's a white shoes and there's a lot of things going on, but you can also learn, like we were talking about, emotional regulation is actually super hot. Or it's the little things that make this character fall in love with this person. Oh, he ran her a bath. That's so bare minimum, but it like is such a wonderful thing. And so any reader can learn from it. But I've had a lot of women readers tell me my husbands have learned so much from reading books like this, and not even just these sexual scenes. It's those little things that these men do, not I'm going to go cut this person into pieces because he looked at you wrong. But he ran her a bath. He got her a snack. He made her a forethought, which is one of the sexiest things I think you can do as a human being is show your partner that you are a forethought. I have thought about you. I know you don't like almonds, you like peanuts or whatever it is. And so I didn't put any out, or I know that you're exhausted, so I'm not going to try to move on you right now.
Yes.
And so I think those are things that we can learn, even if it is something completely outside of our realm.
But mostly, I just love pulling from all of the different stories and then being like, how could this have been different? Or if it was this exact same as it was in mythology, how does that carry through to today? And of course, just play with the monsters because the monsters are fun. And the powers.
Yeah. Oh, I know. Cerberus. Little puppy. I know. It was like, because we're all thinking, like, we're led to believe that he's this scary dude, like, scary little pup dog. But then Laris, can I pet him? I'm like, God, that makes her also relatable because I'm like, I'm a sucker for dogs. So I probably would have reacted the same way. But can I say hi?
I think I don't know how much you're on TikTok, but I'm on TikTok a lot. And there's all those videos of women in particular just being like, oh, it's a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Let me pet. So cute, little lizard. And so that's how I approached her. I also based him a lot on, so when I was in my 20s, I had a 100-pound German Shepherd. And he would have ripped anybody up who approached me in any way that he did not like. Me, he was a total little softy squish with, and everybody else, he was like, yeah, don't come near my mom. And so that's how I approached Cerberus. It's also fun that he has 3 heads. It allowed me to give him 3 different personalities. That was also really fun. You'll probably find that in my previous books, I do like to add some kind of dangerous pet character. So for instance, in the Dominion series, he's a devourer, and he becomes her one of her little entourage. And so I guess I just really enjoy the dangerous pet trope.
Okay, time traveling, they have no control over it, and they don't. It's so terrifying because they don't know who's gonna fall, and they don't know when it's gonna happen. They just know that after a certain age, they're in the clear, or after a certain family, if a family member falls, they're in the clear. Everyone else, and so I was like thinking about the implications of that, and just the fact of like that it's an African American family, it's a Black family. It's because I'm trying to put myself in that position. I'm like, if I was just even a family curse where even at any point in these past couple centuries that you go throughout the story where I think it's 5 generations of the family, you're following this, and it's, oh, you don't know where you're going to end. You don't know when it's going to happen. You don't know who it's going to happen to. You don't know where you're going to end up. You don't know what time period you're going to end up in. And I was like, for me, that's terrifying. That's like an irrational fear now of mine. Just get dropped somewhere where I have no idea where I am or what time it is. And I'm white. I'm like, I have white skin, and I'm a woman, but just the fact that a Black family has this curse is so much more heartbreaking and terrifying. And it was just like, add that. It adds so many layers to it. It adds so many layers of the implications and the horror, and how much like just the preparation. Because then it was a little, once I got the hang of, I like how you structured it, but it took a minute to pay attention. It took a minute to follow along, but I think that was done really well from a storytelling perspective. And yeah, I just remember, okay, because some family members who are aware of it, and they're walking around with always prepared. And then we also meet family members who have no clue what is going on, and they're grieving, they're terrified, they're like, what is happening? And it's because they have no idea, and they're so confused, and they're so scared. And I was like flipping the pages. I was like, oh my God, wait a second. Like, I was getting sucked in, and I was rooting for them. My heart broke for them. And it was such a cool concept, because that's one of the more powerful themes that I've noticed. Like, I was taking like random notes as I was progressing through the story. And one of the things that stood out was there's a couple of significant female characters, and there's something to be said about their actions where it's because you're juxtaposing that with philosophy, the department that they work. A lot of philosophers believe that women were inferior, and they're very misogynistic, and that was just like how the world was, and everybody should just accept it. And so juxtaposing that with women making choices, finding their voices, like
I love that.
feeling like almost taking the power back, even though if it's as rebelling a little bit, being defiant and going against, even if it's reckless and self-destructive behavior, they're making that choice for themselves, and
I
they're
love
using
that
that
so
power.
much. I have honestly never even put that together, but it's such a great point, because one of the things that I've had to reckon with is these philosophers that I love who do write these shocking things about women. And it's not, most of them can't be simply distilled into one idea. And so it's like learning to sit with this kind of ambiguity and this contradiction. But I never put 2 and 2 together that in a way, like, my female characters are like some of the strongest characters, and they have a lot of agency, whether or not they're making good choices, whatever good choices might mean. None of the characters, they all make bad choices at times.
Another thing that was so cool was like how that I guess I didn't think of, was the art scene was like people were on edge to find that, to secure that authenticity, to confirm it, because there was post World War II, and the Nazis were stealing art, and there was like all sorts of forgeries going on, because who could say who knows if the real one is in a Nazi's basement somewhere?
Right.
Who knows that? Who's to say that? And I'm like, that's so crazy how there's like a whole underground forgery ring. I've heard about Nazis like confiscating a lot of stuff from people, like high value stuff. But I was like, I guess I didn't take it a step further to the implications of that, of the aftermath of that, and how there would be people taking advantage of that. I thought that was so cool.
Yeah, and some of those troves came back onto the market earlier, but some didn't. This is 73, and that was World War II, and yet they were still having the market flooded here and there with an authentic trove, maybe forgeries in it as well, and everybody was on edge. But another really interesting thing I found in my research, which I loved, was back in the 70s, art was classified by insurance purposes still under marine cargo. And it didn't get this sort of cachet and elevated values until money came back into the global market in the 1980s. And people wanted to park their money places, and they started parking it in art. Because we know of art as a Monet went for 100 million, and that was just picking up pace in the 70s, but it really took off wildly in the 80s. So that's another kind of interesting aspect of the whole thing of how we regard art.
And there you go. That was 100 Cantina Conversations and Counting, the 100th episode of Cantina Book Club podcast. If you guys have made it with me this far, thank you for listening to this long episode. I hope you've had a lot of fun listening to my favorite clips over the past 100 episodes. And whether you've been here from the beginning, whether you caught me from the Nerd Cantina, or you just started listening because you saw an interview with one of your favorite authors or books that you recently read, I really do appreciate everyone who decides to give my little baby podcast some time of their day on their commute, while they're doing your chores, anything, any time and energy that you spend with me, I totally appreciate. And I really hope that you find it worthwhile and you want to stick around for more. As always, rate, review, subscribe, find Cantina Book Club on your favorite podcast player or YouTube. It's one of the easiest ways to keep up to date with what I've got going on and also support the show and help the show reach more listeners for more bookworms like you. And I appreciate everything you guys do. And of course, and every week I say, if you need book recommendations, check out bookclub.com. If you're finding books that you like or authors that you like, go ahead and hop on to Amazon or Goodreads or your favorite book review blog, anything like that, or wherever you find book recommendations, and leave them a rating and a review. It's probably one of the easiest ways to help them out. And as always, thank you guys so much for listening and for watching. And I hope you stick around for the next 100.